Well, if you like, you can start also.
Good evening.
Pleasure. It's an interesting subject because there's so much for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. You've got Chodesh Elul. I'm going to start and take you with a story. And it's important that everybody listening will realize why I'm saying this story. There was a shul where they invited a Rav to give a drosha. And this Rav was renowned for giving fire and brimstone. He would give Gewalt. And the Rav warned him. He said, there are sensitive people here. He says, I'll give you permission to speak. He gets into the pulpit and, does he give them in Tatnarain? You can imagine. And everybody's sitting there crying except one man. He's sitting at the front of the shul laughing. So at the end of the drosha, the Rav went down. He said, it was an emotional drosha. Why were you laughing? Everybody else was crying because of what I was saying. He says, Rebbe, he says, you should know, I'm not a member of the shul, so it doesn't affect me. Now, whenever we're coming to Erev Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, it affects every one of us. No matter what we say or who we're speaking to, we've got to understand it applies to absolutely Klal Yisrael. We've got the message is there clear. And I want tonight to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we do. For example, next week, we start Slichas. There's an interesting thing. There's a difference between the Slichas of Sfardim and the Slichas of Ashkenazim.
Not this week.
No, I'm saying next week they start.
Oh, next week, you say this week.
Yeah, next week.
Next week.
And it'll start on Sunday, next Sunday, next Motzei Shabbos. And the reason is that there has to be a minimum, by Ashkenazim, a minimum of 4 days of Slichas. The question is, why dafka 4 days? Listen to me. So you take a couple of days, but what's the difference? 4 days. And the answer is as follows. We are compared, Erev Rosh Hashanah, Erev Yom Kippur, to like the animals. We're an animal. We're nothing more than a physical animal. And we're standing before a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and we're going to be chas v'sholem. We could be a korban. If you give a korban in the Beis HaMikdash, any korban, it had to be a minimum of 4 days where you could check it every single day to make sure that there was no blemish, no mum. The same thing as well as here. We are standing before a Kodesh Baruch Hu, before Rosh Hashanah, and we have to ensure that we are absolutely perfect for this Yom Hadin. So the 4 days are there to give us the opportunity, A, for us to search our own selves, but B, for the Kodesh Baruch Hu to search us and make sure that we are deserving of what we have. Okay? There are so many stories told, and forgive me if I tell you a lot of stories tonight, but you will see that every story has a message. I'll give you another example. We've got Unasana Toikev coming up, correct? Mi Yorum, Mi Yosher, Mi Yorum, Mi Yonia, etc. Who's going to be rich? Who's going to be poor? There's a beautiful story, and oh boy, is it come to hand. There was a Gvir, a very wealthy man, and he made the chasana for his last child. And you can imagine, no expenses were spared. Absolutely a magnificent simcha. The balabos, all of a sudden, towards the end, started crying. And he shouted, "Get me a hammer and a nail." Now, if I were to sit in front of you and shout to you, "Get me a hammer and nail," you think I'd lost my marbles, you think I'd got Meshiga. But we were all worried. Why was this Gavir crying and shouting, "I want a hammer, I want a nail"? What was going on there? So they went over to him and they said the following, and you will see the build-up to the Aseret Shebeit Teshuvah. He said, he said, it's coming to Rosh Hashanah. He said, I've had such mazel. Comes to business, I've been matzliach in absolutely everything. All my children are happily married. all got shidduchim, and they're all living very comfortably. They're lovely. So he said, well, why are you crying? He said, you don't read the tefillahs then, do you? He says, in the tefillah it says, who will be rich and who will be poor? Mi ye osher, umi ye oni. He said, I need to put my mazel and put a nail in my mazel to stop it from going down, to losing my wealth, that I've had all this mazel up till now. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu shouldn't change what is actually going on in my life. Now, you may take that as a sort of a mishigas, but what does he mean by the nail? What is the hammer and the nail? It's not physical, that he can stand up and he can stop his mazel from going down. It says as follows. The nails are teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah. Okay? If you do these mitzvahs, and we'll come to them in a minute, he says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will realize that you're an emistic person and you're not going to go and twist the fate that your wealth will go down to be poor. For the poor, we pray they'll become rich, but you've got to worry. He says, this is basically a man realizing what's going on in society and in the world. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't know if you listen to the news. It's gefährlich. Klal Yisrael here are suffering. Wherever we go, we're suffering. And we've got to make sure that HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually looks after us. Now, just to jump a bit to Yom Kippur, he says, Ne'ilas Sha'a. He said, the gates are closing. Now, I think in Amsterdam, you've got a lot of jewelers, am I correct? So therefore, you will know that nobody's got a single door in the jewelry. You go in one door, it closes behind you, and only when it closes does the next door open that you can go into the building. He says, this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We will be, after the gates have opened for us, the gates of Teshuvah, the gates of Tefillah, we'll be stuck in the middle. Shah Ne'ilas, it says, we're coming towards Ne'ilas Shah, to the locking. He says, please, Rabbeinu Shalom, make sure the gates are open for us, that we can come in and we can be safe and secure. Now, from the very beginning of Elul, from the beginning, I beg your pardon, we go start already from Av. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending messages to us, what we should be doing. We know it's 30 days, but he's giving us an even warmer and a longer warning. We come all of a sudden to Shivosa B'Tammuz. What are we doing there? We as a people are praying for Beis HaMikdash, correct? That's what we're there for. We're crying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, it's dead easy. You want the Beis HaMikdash? He says, I'll tell you. He said, there are 3 haftarahs, Gimel de Paranusa, correct? For before Tisha B'Av. The first one is Divrei Yirmiyahu. The second one is Shimu Devar Hashem. And the third one is Chazon Yeshayahu. The Chachomim tell us, he said, have a little bit of seichel. Do you know what the Rebbeinu Shem is telling us? Through the Nevi'im are standing and shouting at us and warning us. Divrei Yirmiyahu. If you want the Beis HaMikdash, watch your words. Devorim. Watch what comes out of your mouth. A remes, just an indication. He says, not only that, we come into Shimu Devar Hashem. Be careful what you listen to. Don't only just, don't talk Lashon Hara. Don't listen to Lashon Hara. And then Chazon Yeshayahu. Don't look at things you shouldn't be looking at. You hear that? This is the warning. Everywhere we go, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is warning us in the Torah how we should be behaving. Then we come to Chazon. Nachamu, I said, beg your pardon, that's the vision. Then after Tisha B'Av is Nachamu. And what we're telling us, what the Chachomim are telling us is, we might not have got the Beis HaMikdash back yet, but you know something, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here to give us Nachama. And we're missing it. We're throwing it away. We're not listening to the words of the Nevi'im. we're not listening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to the brachas that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us. Comes to a major question. Why do we blow the shofar? So we've got Amos, and I've seen many interpretations. Amos says in English, I'll translate it for in English, shall the shofar be blown in the city and the people not tremble? Shall evil befall a city and HaKadosh Baruch Hu hasn't done it? So in other words, we can see already HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us with the shofar, it's supposed to be there to make us scared. How many people are frightened? You know, I find this very difficult. When I used to blow shofar, I've blown shofar since I was 15. So you've got about 65 years or 75 years, 70 years. I've been blowing shofar. And the biggest joke of all is that when I start blowing, the kindler come and laugh and joke. You know that? Have you watched it? How the children want to come and make a chayzik. They would, the shofar. And yet people who are genuine will know that the sound of the shofar is a frightening one. So really, let's understand. If we're talking about teshuvah, what is the shofar telling us? There's the halacha. What can we use as a shofar? Or what can't we? It's easy. We can use everything except one. What can't we use for a shofar? Do you know? What can't we blow for a shofar? A cow's horn. Did you know that? A cow's horn is possible for shofar as a shofar. Do you know why? Very simple. We built a golden calf. And if you took a shofar into the Beis HaMikdash, can you imagine you're insulting HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the thing that caused us the churban, that caused us everything, and we're blowing it and we're taking it to the Beis HaMikdash. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I don't want that in the Beis HaMikdash. Sorry, keep it out. So then why is it we can take a ram's horn and all the other horns, and let me tell you, and it's very scary. Every single thing that we do is a physical teshuvah. If we do something with our hands, let's say chas v'sholem, we steal something. How do you do teshuvah? You give it back, correct? Your mouth speaks lashon hara. How do you do teshuvah? You learn Torah. You listen to things you shouldn't listen to. How do you change that whole attitude? You listen to a shia. This is the inyan. So in the physical world, there is inyanim of, there are ways of being able to do teshuvah. That's easy. But what about the ruchnias, the gashmias, the spiritual world in which we live? How do we do that? How do we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to forgive us for the inner core of our, we're going off HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What we're doing is, whenever we blow the shofar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling a yid that it is your inner quality that has become the panemius of Kedusha has to be cleaned. So what you're doing is you're blowing out air. You're blowing out the gashmias. You're blowing out the averas from inside you. Are you with me? In other words, there are two things of teshuvah. There is the gashmias, the physical, and there's the panemius, the inner quality of the individual. The person takes the shofar and he thinks to himself the meaning of it. He says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells them that you've got to be able to do teruah. And what is teruah? Teruah is a person's prepared to prepare from his inner self. Do you know, by the way, we call it Yom Teruah, not Yom Tekiah, Yom Teruah. It's the inner Teruah, the blowing of the Teruas Melech, the responses of in the Medrash, in the Posuk, it says, L'ro Omo B'Yisrael, we haven't observed any perversion across Klal Yisrael. Because why? Because Teruas Melech boy. Because the response is, the verse says here, it's the blowing of the shofar, an expression of reus. Reus is friendship. Reus is closeness. It's our closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides he wants to forgive us for everything that we have done. You know, I'm going to tell you, there's so many things that we're going to have to do during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Just a couple of them. I heard a tremendous story. And it's interesting. Let's start, first of all, with next week. As you're right, next Motzei Shabbos, not this week, but next week. Where do we start? Slichas. The opening words of Slichas are the strangest things of all. I want to tell you. I looked at it, and I'll read it to you, just the Hebrew. He says as follows. It says, Dofaknu delosecho. We knock on your doors. Delosecho dofaknu. Just at the very opening of Slichas, on your doors we knock. Do me a favor. I've knocked on your door. On your door, I need to repeat. We knock on your doors we knock. What's going on here? Kodesh Baruch Hu knows it. We've done it. So why do we repeat it? Oh, did I see a fabulous thing. And this applies to a Godel, by the way. This is not a joke. This was deadly serious. There was a Meshulach who used to go collecting, okay? And he used to go around always knocking on doors, asking Klal Yisrael to give him things for tzedakah, okay? Now this Rosh Yeshiva, he went and he knocked on this first door. It was in America at the time. And the woman answered it. Listen to this. He knocked. He says, I'm here from the yeshiva. I hope you'll help me. To which she turned around and she said, I've never met you before. I don't know who you are. I don't know what yeshiva you represent. So, l'chaim l'sholem, geh gesundheit. I'm sorry, I'm not giving. So he said, okay, thank you very much. And he went away. Wished her a good yontif and went away. An hour later, after having visited many of the other houses in the area, he knocked on her door again. She said, excuse me, but didn't I tell you an hour ago, I don't give to people that I've never met before? Madam, I was here an hour ago. You met me already. So how could you say you haven't met me? The fact that we come to a Kodesh Baruch Hu with our slichas and we say, Rabbeinu Shalom, I'm here. The Rabbeinu says, I haven't met you yet. You haven't been before. And let me tell you something. This can apply to every single one of us if we're not doing if we're not davening properly, if we're not communicating with the Kodesh Baruch Hu properly. Don't be despondent. Come back again. You met me at Slichas. You met me at davening before. So please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, have Rachmanis on me. You got the story now? You're introducing yourself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the whole inyan of the shofar as well. We're blowing the shofar because we're saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rabbeinu Shalom, we want you to come and we want you to help us and to be with us all the time. So, you know, it's an amazing thing, this. So that's why we have 4 days, we blow. And by the way, we don't have notes on the shofar. It's a bracha I give you. I always like ending it, but I'll begin with it. What are the 3 notes that we blow, the 3 sounds? Tkiyah, Shvarim, and Teruah. If you look through the Torah, Tkiyah was blown when Klal Yisrael was successful in a battle or something. Simcha, that's the Tkiyah, a long note. Shvarim, as I said, is an inner breakage. It's only Shetri, it's a short one. Teruah is when Chmona Litzlon, there is major problems. Okay? And that's how we come to Rabbeinu Shalom. Rabbeinu Shalom. There's not one person in this world, not one, who hasn't had all 3 Tkiyahs, Tkiyah, Shvarim, and Teruah, where we've been challenged. We've had Simchas. We may have had a cold or something. We've had it before COVID came. Some people have suffered because of the COVID. Is that how we end? No. How do we end all our shofars? Tkiyah Gedolah. It's a promise that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving to Klal Yisrael. you'll be tested. We all get tested, and no matter what we do in our life. But if we want to listen properly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Tkiyah Gedolah will be there for us. But we've got to show our emunah and our betochen. So now let's go further. I tell you, I have a sad story, a very, very sad story, because it comes into our davening. Have you noticed that in our davening, and whether it's in Slichas, whether it's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, there are parts of the davening that we stand up and go Shrai Chai V'Kayim, correct? How do we finish? Hashem Hu, Shema Yisrael, the end of Yom Kippur. Hashem Hu Elokim, Baruch Shem Kivah Malchus, correct? And we scream it at the top of our voice. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've always wondered why. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not deaf. Okay? What was that story? The little boy, he says, his father said, it's your birthday coming up. Do you know what you want? So he says, Rabbi Shalom, and he started shouting, I want this and I want that. And he was on the top of his voice. Which his father said, listen, Bubba, HaKadosh Baruch Hu isn't deaf. Which the little boy turned around and said, yeah, I know he isn't deaf, but my grandmother isn't sure. I wanted to hear what I want for my birthday. I've got to get the voices out. Now, you might think that's a joke. I'm going to tell you. And this is a true story again, which I was told by somebody who actually witnessed it. There was a shiva. There were 3 young men sitting shiva. English, I'll use the expression, excuse me, English achayas. But they were short of 1 for a minyan. You hear me? And one of the sons with his chapel, and you know how it is in the middle with his head, comes out and he sees a Yid walking down. He stops the Yid, he says, Rabbi Yid, he says, we're saying Kaddish, will you come in and help make a minyan? He said, we're only short of 1. He said, Avada, Davka. He goes in, but going in, he kisses the mezuzah, which is absolutely giant mezuzah. Kisses it. He goes in, and he sees these 3 English achayas sitting there davening. Comes to the Kaddish, they take their English papers and the transliteration, and they daven and they say the Kaddish. And the boy said to him, would you like to see something? And they took this frum Yidden, this great guy, into a small room, and on the table were Gemaras, Midrashim, Chumoshim, all open, all together, working it together. And in fact, the man was flabbergasted. He said, this doesn't make sense to me, he says, please. He says, you are English achayas. You can't even say a Kaddish for your father. And yet look what he did. Why haven't you followed in his footsteps? Now the answer's going to hurt. He said, I'll tell you, Rabbi Yid, he says, my father was a survivor at the Holocaust. Everything he did but in secret. When he went to daven, he had a pair of tefillin and he was scared of his life. He would go and hide and daven in a corner. Nobody saw how he davened. Nobody knew this. He was saved and came out from the camps. He said all his life, he wouldn't let us see what he did. He went into this room. He was scared. He shut the door and he learned and he davened and he learned. We never heard. We never knew. We didn't know what he was doing. We're heartbroken. We would have loved to have known. He says, Rabbi Sai, this is what the man said. You can't keep Yiddishkeit a secret. You can't keep your emunah and your betochen a secret. There has to be the Shema Yisrael. Are you with me? This is not a case of you're trying to shout and scream and chayvik. This is a case of showing how important everything is. And this is why we do it here. So, you know, it's so important. That's number 1. Number 1 is to be loud and to daven. But number 2, there's another reason. And again, I found stories to prove everything. I want to tell you, there was a school where there was a gentleman who was an invigilator. He would sit and watch the children doing the exams and everything. Such a lovely guy. And he was one thing he was, and that was he was very, very strict, very strict. So it came in, we were all sitting in the exam, and he comes in, this invigilator, he starts them off and gives them their time. He says, right, you've got 2 minutes to finish. That's a chaim. 2 minutes to finish. One young boy is there, he said, please, I need just a couple of moments. Sorry, I want your paper in. So he stopped exam, that 2 minutes. He said, right, please, pass me the papers. They all handed them in except this boy. The invigilator said, if you don't give me your paper now, you've failed. He said, I need that paper now. He said, but I want to finish. And he didn't listen. And he finished the paper within another couple of minutes. The invigilator turned around and said, I'm sorry, but you failed the exam. I'm not accepting your paper. The boy was a bit upset. And he turned around and said, tell me, he says, do you know who I am? He says, no, I've never met you before. He says, do you know who my father is? He says, how should I know who your father is? Oh, he says, so in other words, you don't know anything about me. Now, by this time, the teacher was getting very angry. He says, I don't care who you are. I don't want to know who you are. At that point, the young boy who was doing the exam lifted up some of the papers, put his paper in the middle and says, L'chaim u'l'sholem, I'm off. He mixed up his papers with all the others. The examiner did not know whose paper it was. What's the moshel there, the nimshel? HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at Klal Yisrael not just as individuals. He looks at Klal Yisrael as a family. He looks at Klal Yisrael as a people. We're in the middle. We're putting our notes in the middle. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking at all of the mitzvahs and everything. He's not looking at individuals. What a machaya. We've got an opportunity of being able to get to that there as well. It's amazing. And the same examiner had a son who was in the same class in school. Now, there's a statement we make over and over again in Rosh Hashanah Kippur. Ovinu Malkeinu. And I'll tell you, there's an anomaly. It's a strange thing. Our Father, our King. Well, make up your mind. Is the King our Father? Is our Father our King? If you ask Harry or William, they might give you different answers. But the fact is, we daven and we say, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. What are we saying? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Malchus on Rosh Hashanah. On Yom Kippur is Malchus. We've got the three Malchus, Shofar, Zechron. We've got the three. We don't have of us. We don't go up and say, Daddy, please, or do we? And the answer is as follows. Avinu Malkeinu, the little boy misbehaved in class, and his father, who was the teacher, gave him a patch. And he said, you'll behave from now on. On the way home, the father said to him, Bubala, how did you enjoy school today? He says, Tata, he said, school was lovely. He says, but please, he says, I know you're my teacher, and I know you're my father. Next time you have to hit me, don't hit me so hard. Be my father and not my teacher. This, Rabbi A, please, is what the Rabbeinu Shalom is saying to us. Malkeinu, that's Elokeinu. That's a Kadosh Baruch Hu coming down, meeting judgment on Klal Yisrael. But what are we saying? Tatale, Daddy, have a grosser rachmanis on us. Please look after us. Can you see the whole of our davening from beginning to end is a plea, children talking to his parent, to his father. in a way that he will listen to us in a loud way, not in a quiet way. So you can see that it goes. It's a scary thing. This that we've got to remember that when we blow the shofar, to remember who we're blowing it for. We're not blowing it for Kodesh Baruch Hu, we're blowing it for ourselves. We're asking as well that within the Sanataykev shouldn't be part of us as well. We're asking us to let us be into the open, and this examiner should be, she's our examiner. And now we come to some of the other things that we do. Can you see already? I've shown you all the outsigns which I wanted you to hear. Shofar, slichas. I mean, there's so many things that we do for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And by the way, there's Hashem Kel Rachum V'chanu. That's a strange tefillah. And I'll come to that in a minute, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us an opportunity for teshuvah. But I'd like to move on to something else. You know, I said to you there are simonim. You all know what the simonim are. I've got a sefer, and it's an amazing thing that the one I'll deal with is the apple and the honey. And by the way, I don't know whether you do know this, but you put an apple and you put honey on the table for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, correct? Some people have got the minhag of putting salt. Sorry? Yeah, well, that's the David Oiri as well, exactly the same thing. And by the way, the David Oiri is another beautiful. Achas shoalti meis Hashem. I'm asking, I only want one thing from you. We say to the Rabbi Shalom. What is that? Shifti b'veis Hashem. Call you. I want to live with you in your Beis Hamikdash. Yeah. Shifti b'veis Hashem. Call you chayai. V'shafti b'veis. It says, and also we want to be the Eirech Yomim. We want to be a visitor as well. So make up your mind. Do we want to be a visitor in the Beis Hamikdash, or do we want to be a resident in the Beis Hamikdash? Achas shoalti shifti b'veis Hashem kol yemei chayai. Shifti, what was it? Shifti b'veis Hashem kol yemei chayai. V'roi, what was it? What's the next verse? Oi. And then I want to be a visitor amongst you. You'll look it up, you'll see it. I'm a bit famished on this. So the Rebbeinu Shalom gives the answer. He says, every time you go to shul, you should be like a visitor. But you go to shul regularly. Don't treat it as though you own the shul. Have you ever noticed the people who go to shul 3 times a day, and the shtiblach and all the rest of it, but what do? It's terrible. They're the ones who schmooze. You watch it, it's frightening. You shifty, I want to sit down, I want to sit. But I also want to be like a visitor. If you've got visitors in your house, how do they behave? A bissel derech eretz, no? And this is what we're saying as well. We're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for derech eretz as well. So this is the David we say. And by the way, the union of honey is completely misunderstood. Oh, is that misunderstood? Let me read to you. It's unbelievable. It's a very, very funny story that I found. That oh yeah, by the way, I missed out something which I found, that when I said to you, we daven out loud. When is the loudest part of davening in the whole of Yom Tov?
Shamus.
When?
Shamus.
No.
In the end.
At the end. Right. On Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur.
Israel. Now, I'm going to ask you, and as far as I'm concerned, once I've spoken, bin ich ausgemattert. I've davened all day, and by the time I get to Meirav, I'm ready. Now I'm going to eat. I'm trying, they say, ausgeluluft. You're shaking so much. Surely then it should be the other way around. You should be davening quietly. Let me tell you a story as well. Again, I found this to be a true story. He was told by the Dubin Magid. He said there was a Cheder teacher in the shtetl, And he was known to be compassionate and loving to the Kehillah. He had one day the visitor. The visitor comes in and he says to the visitor, was in the dinner, he says, he said, this visitor came, he said to him, I have a son, he says, who is being called up to the army, to the Russian army. He says, please, he says, can you get him out of the army? Can you get him out of it? He thought, that's a bit strange. That's a bit strange. Why would he come to him? He said, look, he said, you'll have to come back later. I'm busy now. It's Erev Shabbos, it's Shabbos. Came back again. He said, look, he said, I've told you they're coming. He says, they're going to take him away. They're going to put him in the army. I need some help from you. He said, look, he says, can you come back at Shalosh Shudas in the afternoon? He said, if you come back in the afternoon, I'll have a bit more time to talk to you. Now, can you imagine, this is going on. Same thing, comes in, he said, look, he said, I've told you. He said, thank you for seeing me again, but I've got this young man, my son. I'm desperate. Can we get him out of the army? To which he turned round and he said, Velvet turned and said, Arise, you're an imposter. I hope your son will be very happy in the army. He'll make a fine soldier. And the yeshiva bochrim was standing there. Listen to this. Rebbe, how could you do that? That poor neshama will go to the army, the Russian army. Surely you'll have Rahmanis on him. Help him. He said, no. He said, that man was an imposter. I beg your pardon? He says, how do you know? He said, it was the simplest test of all. Tell me something. If you're desperate for something and you come on the first time, how do you speak? Sorry about that. My wife will take it. How do you speak? You speak, to begin with, gently. And if he tells you to come back, oi, please. You go the second time. Look, Rebbe, please, I need your help. I'm desperate. And finally, the Shalosh Shudas thought, Rebbe, I'm in trouble. You've got to get me out of this trouble. I don't want my son. How did he do it? Rebbe, I've got a son. I don't want him to go to the army. Rebbe, do you think he had any problems? Do you think he was a shakran or he was telling the emes? Had he been telling the emes, his whole voice would have changed. His vocabulary would have changed. His anxiety would have changed. Am I correct or not? And I tell you, it's interesting. I remember we just had, with Baruch Hashem, great grandchildren. And I remember the first time my granddaughter went to the hospital. She said, I'm due. Ah, go home, you're not due. She went back the next day. She said, look, she said, I'm panicking now. And they kept her in. If she would have just gone and said, I think I'm having the baby now, they'd have sent her back home again. The same thing is with the Rabbeinu Shalom. We're standing before a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and we're saying the same feels. If you daven Shmona Esrei, and you say the same Shmona Esrei, helft gar nicht. Have you ever looked at the davening of the Shmona Esrei, really what we're saying? What do we say there? We come to the Shmona Esrei, we say the opening words. What are the opening words? Hashem, Sufasai Tiftoch. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, open my lips. Ufi yagiti lasecha, my mouth will declare your praise. Now, why do we say that? We've been davening all morning. We've had bir brochas, psuke de zimra, kriyas shema, and all of a sudden we say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, open my mouth. I need to daven. You should have said that at the beginning, not now. The answer is as follows. Our attitude changes during the times of davening as to where we are and who's in front of us. There's another story. It's a true story, by the way. I took my daughter to the garden party, and there she met the royal family. She became so flustered, so excited, and so good. She was waiting. She couldn't get the words out of her mouth. She didn't know what to say. I said, what happened? She said, I was scared. I didn't know I would say the wrong thing. I said to her, now you see what's going on. We have 7 heavens. The Rabbi Shalom is on the top 7th when we come in with the brachas. We move along to the next one, to the second one. Now, if you think about it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is on 7, and we're on 1. He moves to 2, he goes on to 6. He goes on to 3, he goes on to 4, which is the Psuke de Zimra. We go to 5, which is the Birchas Shachas, the Shema. When we come to the 7th heaven, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is equal with us on the 4th level, when we've come down and onto the 4th level, where are we? We're standing in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, face to face. That's the time when we should be so scared. What can we say? What can we do? We've got HaKadosh Baruch Hu facing us, right in front of us. How is it possible that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not listen to us? So can you just imagine that it's such a machaya that what have I got here? Something else. I've had so much stuff here. No, that's a different one altogether. I've got here about we've done the shofar, we've dealt with the shofar. I want to deal with something else now, something which is rather strange. You take an apple and you dip the apple in the honey. Let's have a sweet year. Why don't we buy a bag of sweets? Sit down and have a sweet. I'd rather have a sweet, but I'm diabetic, so it might not be good for me. What's going on here? What's the inyan of the sweet year? It's an old custom which is in the Shulchan Aruch, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, that we follow tradition with the Rosh Hashanah rituals. You know what we do? First of all, you've got the apple and the honey. And do you know what all the other ones are? Have you been through all the other ones? Just let me get them for you. They're unbelievable, some of them. And if you think they're clever, I haven't got a clue what they are. There's a whole Seder. There's a Seder for Rosh Hashanah as well, not just for Pesach. Number 1, we have as follows, the apple, and we say, a sweet year. And then we go on as follows, a pomegranate. And we say that the pomegranate has got 613 pips. Mole mitzvahs kariman. Have you ever tried to count the pomegranate? I promise you, it ain't 613. What's going on there? Vesach nicht. Then we've got as follows. We've got black beans. It says the word zuchuyois means we should be meritorious. Leeks. We should have carrots from the Hebrew word meron, the Yiddish word more. What's going on here? Since when were we superstitious? Since when did we sit down and take all these different things and do them? Again, I'll tell you another story. As follows. There was a story told about a very, very wealthy gentleman, and he got his driver, it was a German count, and he asked his driver to take him from Germany to Paris. He wanted to make a special purchase. What was he going to be buying? Now, this is the funny thing. He was buying a bird. He says, a myna bird. You know what a myna bird is? Got beautiful singing. You with me? And he goes, his driver takes him and takes him to go there. And he says, this little bird, he says, why'd you buy it? He said, it's an absolute fortune. Never in your lifetime will you be able to afford it, he says to his driver. So without even responding, the driver went home and he said to his wife, he said, I'm going to one day get you something which you will really appreciate and enjoy. He saved up, believe it or not, he went to France and he picked up this minor bird and he gave it to his wife. He says, now, darling, you know what a minor bird, you put it in a cage and it plays music, sings music for you. Well, this Shlemazel, this Amoris, says, you cook it. We'll have it for supper tonight. It's supposed to be a delicacy. Well, it tasted geweldig. Add some more peppers, add some more seasoning and everything. Whatever he did, it didn't work. So he went back to his balabos. He said, what's going on here? He said, I did everything. He says, and I cooked it. He said, Shlemazel. He says, you're just not doing the wrong thing. Bird hasn't got any taste. He said, this bird is there for you to take pleasure in looking at it. It's the aroma, not the taste. He says, you're an idiot. There are hundreds of tastier items than this one. So he said, the bird makes the most exquisite sounds and you go and put it away. So if you're only interested in eating it, go somewhere else. The dipping the apple in the honey is not the essence of eating the apple and the honey. It's making the simon, the sign that's there. He says there are other sweeter dishes we could eat. We could have the pomegranate dipped in honey with the pips. He says if you're going to start looking them, it's because it's the food, then you've misunderstood the whole thing. It's the tefillah that we're offering that is the important thing. You know, you remember Reb Shalom Shvadron used to say, and I remember because he came here and I remember meeting him, do we eat the apple to make the bracha, or do we make the bracha to eat the apple? Right? This is the whole union of Rosh Hashanah. We're not eating the apple because we want a sweet thing. People come with a red apple, put it in the honey. Oh, nachtigen tog. You can get sweeter things, I told you. I can buy a beautiful sweets and eat it. The Iker is the bracha. We're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything is tefillah, going through with tefillah. So this is the most important thing. So Rabbi A, you see, there are so many things that go on that we have to think about very, very carefully. That Yom Kippur is the grand opening. You remember, we say that, I said to you at the beginning, don't get stuck in the gates, because you go through one gate, you have to open the other gate as well. You with me? The security. We go in one gate, we go in the middle, open the second gate, we go in the middle. Our tefillahs on Yom Kippur, right from the very beginning, are all to do with the Spanish Inquisition. We daven there because we says, Mutar lehispalel im ho'avaryonim. We've got permission to daven even with the sinners. And I'll never forget this. We always look to make sure that why do we make a big fuss about people who never come to shul all year, but all of a sudden they turn up for davening Rosh Hashanah for Yom Kippur. Why is it that we do that? And the answer is, we're showing HaKadosh Baruch Hu we're a kehillah. It's the kehillah that matters, not the individual. We're individuals, but we need the kehillah. Without the kehillah, we are completely gone. Now, the Sedra's Nitzovim next week, isn't it? It's an interesting Sedra.
Yes.
I'll let you want you to read it. Atem Nitzovim ayam kuchem. Gewaltig Moshe Rabbeinu. He's telling you off. If somebody says to me, you really have got it, you're standing firm. Shkoyach. What's he saying? Nitzovim comes from the word matseva. You're stuck in the mud. You're not moving. Atem nitzovim ayam kuchem. You've got to keep moving. You can't stop. Moshe Rabbeinu, Kisovoi, he went. Moshe went from one to the other. According to some pshatim, Moshe Rabbeinu was dead. And he went and it was in Gan Eden he was going. Others say he made the effort to show you that even though you think you can't do it, you certainly can do it. All right? Now, I'm going to end with a very interesting thing that I read. And you'll like it. And it's from the Sedra of Noach. Eile told us Noach. Right, what does Rashi say there? and this is the Gedolim bring this down. These are the generations of Noach. Noach ish tzaddik. Noach was a righteous man. Rashi says that the physical generations of Noach were his Maisim Tovim. He had 3 sons afterwards, correct? But the physical was the mitzvahs that he did. What did he do? And I saw this unbelievable. Number 1, his first son was called Shame. He made a reputation for himself where he lived, Noach. And that's the most important thing that we have to remember. Our generation, what we leave behind, the Yerusha we leave to our children is our Shem Tov. We ask them to continue with that Shem Tov. That's so important for all of us, the shame that we make. And you know, I'll go in that in another second. The second one is Cham. When you deal with people, particularly over the davening, do it with warmth, with feeling, with understanding. Don't just blah, 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 blah. Words don't mean anything unless you understand what you're saying. They can become your children, and their children will follow in your example. If you set the example of giving a reputation of cham, of warmth, of love, and yafes, Ze Keli v'anvehu, this is my God, and I will beautify him. What does it mean? It means when you do a mitzvah, you do it with the best. When you go to davening, you put on your best. You daven properly, you put on kittel. You get a nice kittel for Yom Kippur. Show HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you want to be dressed properly for the occasion. Because your generations now are Shem, Cham, and Yofes. Your reputation, Cham, your warmth, and your dress, or your beauty of doing mitzvahs, you're doing the mitzvahs. These are all the way we have to behave in everything that we undertake, in everything we do. Because this is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks to each and every one of us. Whatever you do, look at the Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us, do not run through it quickly. Take your time. You know, and I tell people today, and it's a hard lesson I'm learning. We had this week Sedra, last week, Kavedes avicho v'esimecho, leman yarichin yomecho alo adomo, v'yitav loch. If you honor your parents, you'll get long life and it'll be good for you. There's another mitzvah, Shiluach HaKan. What was the Shiluach HaKan? You send away a bird. So it says there, Yitav loch, it will be good for you, v'yarichin yomecho, and you'll have long life. It's a twist over. Why? When it comes to Shiluach HaKan, you want the eggs or you want the bird straight away. You want the benefit from it immediately. But you also want to show that you've had Rachmanis and you want long life. When it comes to parents, and this is the changing world in which we're living, we're saying, Yarichin Yomecha. If we show love and respect to our parents, we'll have long life. But V'yitav loch, our end will be a good one, because our children will follow in that example that we've set to our example of our parents. Rabbi A, I give you the bracha that we should all have Yarichin Yomecha, we should have Arichas Yomim. It's so important that the Arichas Yomim, without the Yitav loch, without the nachas, without the joy, without the mitzvahs, is absolutely worthless. And that's why with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, we blow the shofar, just to waken us up, to say, Rabbeinu Shalom, I'm not asleep. Rabbeinu Shalom, I'm keeping the mitzvahs. And I hope in Mirza Hashem for Klal Yisrael, and for all of you, we'll have the Beis HaMikdash again, but you'll also have the Arichas Yomim. You'll be able to have all the mitzvahs coming onto you. The Kodesh Baruch Hu will treat you because of everything that you've done, because of what you do for the Kehillah, for the Klal, because it's not because of individuals, it's what we do for the Kehillah, for the Klal. We get the schar and the reward. And I hope in Mirza Hashem we'll all be Zoiche, not just in Amsterdam, but everywhere in the world, that the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt, and B'shua Tova Mitzlachas will all be Zoiche to fly out to Yerushalayim. There'll be no hitch, by the way. We won't have to worry about flights or anything like that because HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take us al kanfei neshorim, on the wings of eagles. We'll be there, we'll get carried out. And I hope in Mitzvah Hashem, you'll all have a Shnas Chaim Brocha. Years, not just 1 year, I just don't like this. Happy New Year. May you have many, many more years. Arichas Yomim, but with proper gesund and parnosa and nachas. You know, I keep telling people, and they don't listen, but I'm telling them. I tell you, you know, you say that Kashem Shenichnas Lavis Kenikonos the Torah, the Chuppah Maisim Toivim. What are Maisim? Sorry? What
I say Omein.
Amen. But what are the Maisim Toivim? Maisim Toivim is not money. Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim. Again, what's Gemilas Chasodim? It's not money. What is Ashirus? It's not money. Ashirus is family. Irrespective of who or where they come. If you've got family, that is in itself Ashirus that the Kodesh Baruch Hu is giving you. You should all in Mitzvah Hashem have lots and lots of nachas from our kinderlich, our einiglich, or einiglich, and we should all be zoiche to the Geula Shalema. And somebody's just sent me a chat. I'll have a quick look and see what it says. I have to leave. Sorry, somebody left in the middle. Okay. I wish you all a good Yom Tov.
Don't Koyach. All
you
the best.
coming?
I hope to see you next Shabbos.
Are you
next
coming?
Friday. Yes, for Slichas, I also coming. Yes,
All right,
I always come.
I wish you all, every one of you, we should all get Klal Yisrael should have a brocha. We've had too many avlos, there's too many illnesses and tragedies. We've had people in floods and it's getting gefährlich. The Rebbeinu Shalom is sending us a message. Simple messages. Do teshuvah now, before it's too late. That's all I wish you all. I wish you all a good Yom Tov, a good Shabbos.
Good Yom Tov. All the best. Thank you very much. Great story.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Good Shabbos. Ja. Oh, hij is er.
Oké, dan die aanwezigen. En wat is vandaag eigenlijk prettige avond verder. Ja.